August 5, 1996 Wrestling Observer Newsletter Major changes to WWE syndication, Herb Abrams dies, Kobashi wins Triple Crown for the first time and more.
Written by Brian Alvarez Monday, August 5, 1996 22:23.
Wrestling Observer Newsletter P.O. Box 1228 Campbell, California 950091228 August 5, 1996. It's almost amazing how fast things change in the pro wrestling industry. Only 6 months ago, it appeared that 1996 was going to be anything but a banner year for the United States industry. As 1995 came to a close, house shows were continuing at a low level for WWF, although there had been a slight increase after Thanksgiving. WCW had shown a house show increase in 1995 as compared to 2 previous terrible years, but it was still not looked at as a category in which the company was expecting to make any money. Buy rates were declining to dangerous levels. Television ratings, surprisingly, were remarkably stable considering the WWF's top-rated show was getting head-to-head competition. The theory was that house shows were becoming simply a loss leader for both promotions.
They would run shows basically to give the wrestlers work, to keep the local syndication television stations happy since they were buying ads on their local stations, and in some cases paying the local station a percentage of the gross, thus as a way to keep their television in good time slots in the markets, and simply to give the company a live presence in markets which theoretically would help in terms of television ratings, which translates into ad revenue and merchandising. If a show made money, that was good, but the idea was almost to run shows not to lose too much money. The money would largely be made on the monthly pay-per-view show, which were declining rapidly, and in ancillary ways such as ad revenue, merchandising, magazines, 900 lines, etc. 6 months later, all the theories are out the window.
While pay-per-view per show revenue is down significantly on both sides, in the case of WWF, they've run 6 PPVs thus far in 1996 as opposed to 4 in 1995, so the decline is somewhat misleading in that the company has probably derived more actual dollars from pay-per-view this year as in the same period last year.
WCW on the other hand ran 4 shows in 1996 and 1995, so the decline is exactly what it appears to be.
Nevertheless, it appears even with a hotter product overall and what appears to be far more overall interest in wrestling, buy rates haven't followed suit. The WCW Outsiders angle, which has been a huge boon to television ratings, when the payoff came, drew less on pay-per-view despite coming on the heels of perhaps the best pay-per-view show in years than the July show did the prior year.
WWF numbers continue on a declining course for the most part since a very strong first quarter with very successful Royal Rumble and a successful first in your house.
What has been the surprise is that both companies are making sizable profits touring. In the case of the WWF, the numbers above are misleading in a sense that the company is running less than half as many shows as they did last year, which means more shows in major markets and all the big talent is on every show. So no B shows in smaller markets to take down the average. Nevertheless, if house shows were looked at as being break-even last year, the changes have been for the better because they are clearly profitable once again.
In the case of WCW, the huge increase is a result of a few things: overall more interest in the company, which mainly stems from the Monday Nitro show being live each week and drawing good numbers, and the Ric Flair-Randy Savage angle, which headlined the vast majority of house shows this year and picked business up in a big way. From a television rating standpoint, the results aren't a surprise. WCW has increased, largely due to Nitro.
WWF has declined, again largely due to Nitro. For the industry as a whole, this year has been a surprising positive.
In an industry that has largely been on a slight decline after a fallout in 1992, this year has been the first sign of a serious resurgence of overall interest, even with pay-per-view declining likely due to the number of shows being presented catching up with both sides.
It's better for the promoters, as it appears for the first time since perhaps the mid-80s, there are 2 national companies that are both making a profit and neither is in a decline or in any apparent danger of not being around for the long haul. It's better for the wrestlers, although some need a crash course in basic economics.
As has been the case the past few weeks in the NBA with the incredible deals signed by Shaq and Michael Jordan, the second and third level players have had salaries brought into the stratosphere as well.
Any breakthrough by the top level usually brings the pay scale up for the middle and lower level players. Instead of players being upset or jealous of dollar figures that on the surface look ridiculous, every new record should be something all the underneath boys, whether it be in wrestling or basketball, should look as a positive because it'll eventually carry over. The greatest thing for the WCW wrestlers and the single greatest thing for the industry as a whole was Kevin Nash and Scott Hall jumping to WCW. It was great for WCW because it made the wrestling war that much more competitive. It forced the hand of Vince McMahon into giving downside guarantees on contracts, breaking a lengthy company policy against any type of guaranteed salary except for Hulk Hogan. The WWF was making more money in the late 80s, but at that point McMahon didn't see Jim Crockett, who was offering guaranteed deals, as the threat. He sees the current WCW, and basically got everyone to sign those legendarily one-sided contracts. No more. It shocks me so many WWF wrestlers are resentful of the rumored deal that unproven Brian Pillman signed, forgetting that in the real world, breakthrough deals like that eventually up the pay scale for the industry. The same with WCW wrestlers and Kevin Nash's deal. Sure, there are wrestlers who have during their career drawn more money and may be better performers than either of them in their respective companies that are earning less money. Life isn't fair, and in almost every aspect of life, timing is everything. But as an overall industry pattern, these deals are the best thing for everyone. The pattern for this industry for close to 100 years is that very few people controlled a very large percentage of the wealth, and those very few people in almost every case, except those lucky enough to become international attractions, were the local promoters. While there were plenty of wrestlers who made a ton of money in the 80s by being in the right place at the right time far more than having any special talents, what special talents did Ed Leslie have other than growing up with a guy whose coattails he could ride, or Larry Fole have other than picking the right parents and coming along at a time when that meant more than talent? There were few long-term guarantees like there are now, and one hell of a lot rougher schedule for the ones making the money. In September, we'll undergo yet another change in the industry's landscape. Titan Sports has made a decision to drop compensation when it comes to its syndicated package. Compensation deals, which basically means the company pays the television station to run its program, as opposed to the opposite, which had been the backbone of the television industry until the past few years, have been around for decades. Once the television industry realized the local wrestling television show, no matter how much it drew in local ratings, was a necessity for the local promoter to fill his houses, they were able in many cases to cut themselves in for a small piece of the action. Still, compensation deals were in their infancy until Titan Sports in 1984 began buying existing traditional time slots in major markets from the local promotion. Eventually Titan was able to wean many of its compensation deals away because it became an in product and stations could sell advertisers on the show. As advertisers started shying away from buying the local wrestling shows, television went on to other things, and both WWF and WCW for the most part in the major markets have been paying for television time to keep the local presence in the market, and because it's basically a necessity to have syndication in the big markets to sell national advertising, and because it was thought that one couldn't run profitable house show business consistently in a market without the direct television advertising the show. The costs of maintaining a syndication network, whether local or national, nowadays must be more than income from the national advertising one can garner from that network, or else WWF wouldn't have made this decision. There are many who blame the weekly debt of maintaining syndication as the key factors that put down Bill Watts' Universal Wrestling Federation in 1987 and Jim Crockett Promotions in 1988. It was also the key reason Smoky Mountain Wrestling was never able to turn the corner. The debt of buying television in markets one was planning to run house shows was considered a necessary and increasing cost of doing business. Things have changed. Largely due to a hotter product and changing viewer patterns. The WWF and WCW have done consistently strong business this year, going on tour with a large percentage of shows in markets without any local television, sold basically off locally bought mass media advertising and publicity, and the hype generated off the Monday night cable shows. In years past, it was the syndicated shows that were the prime shows as far as development of angles, and fans who watched one show per week would watch the weekend syndication on their local station. Now everyone knows if you watch one show per week, to watch on Monday nights, and house shows sold with ads bought on the Monday night shows can do profitable business. Let's use the San Francisco market as an example, shows how the events have played out over the years. In 1984, the WWF, to so-called outsiders, bought the time slot of the American Wrestling Alliance in the San Francisco market on a mid-level UHF station, CH20, for $100,000 per year. While lots of forces in wrestling complained about the territorial infringement, it was hardly different historically than 4 years earlier when the American Wrestling Alliance did pretty much the same thing in the dying days of the Shire Territory. The American Wrestling Alliance was forced to pay to get on a weaker station. Eventually, the WWF was able to gain enough popularity to move to CH2, leading independent station on the West Coast for both its superstars and challenge shows, paying the station in the neighborhood of $150,000 per year, along with 5% of the grosses from local house show. Closed circuits of WrestleMania counted in this formula, as KTVU used to make a lot of money in the early days of WM when it was primarily closed circuit before pay-per-view matured. At some point that compensation figure may have been lowered or even dropped. As the years went on, WWF drew consistently huge business in both San Francisco and Oakland off that station. At one point, NWA bought one of the top slots away from WWF, which lost challenge,
And with the loss of the B show, there was a noticeable decline in the WWF crowds, and NWA came in, sometimes doing good business but usually doing what would be termed disappointing houses. Challenge eventually replaced the NWA worldwide once again. The WWF's business went back up. Eventually, Challenge was dumped, and the gates fell. Finally, in the wake of all the bad publicity, Superstars was dumped, and for the most part WWF hasn't had syndication in this market, one of the top 5 in the country. And without television, the rare house shows in the market didn't draw except a few television tapings in a medium-sized college gym in San Jose. The WWF hadn't run the Cow Palace after a series of shows were unprofitable, drawing under 3,000 paid on a few occasions even with generally strong lineups, since December of 1994. This past week, on July 25, the WWF returned with the same loaded lineup they've run everywhere else on a Thursday night, and despite no local television, drew 5,466 fans, and by increasing ticket prices, since it would be the only show in the building all year, drew a $96,388 gate, a figure that was surely quite profitable. With the exception of cities like Philadelphia, New York, Los Angeles, and a few other majors, running only once per year, the idea of traditional building of returns or putting heat on heels at the house shows aren't as important outside a few core cities, so you just get the guys out there, go through the paces, and put the faces over at the end of the night so everyone goes home happy. The September changes have potential to be major on a lot of levels. If the WWF really dumps compensation, the reality is they aren't going to be on strong stations in major markets and will have worse time slots. Their overall audience will decline, which means a decline in ad rates, particularly in comparison with rival WCW. Obviously, the belief is the decline in ad rates will be less than the money they were paying in compensation, or the move wouldn't be made, which is a sign that the advertising market for wrestling on TV has softened. This leaves the field wide open for WCW, which has no intention of changing its policy. WCW syndication, which is a misnomer, and syndicated advertising is a combination of all syndicated and cable shows, has beaten out WWF's almost every week this season. The most recent figures, for the week ending July 14, the Monday Night Show and weekend cable and syndication shows following the Hogan turn, saw among the biggest gaps ever, WCW being seen in 6.49 million homes on 184 stations in cable. The vast majority of these viewers are on cable, while WWF was seen in 3.92 million homes on 155 stations in cable. With WWF losing strong stations and time slots in key markets come September, this gap should widen greatly next television season, to the point the respective television packages won't even be in the same league to advertisers. One of the things we've pointed out here in the past, going over numbers that nearly everyone who analyzes this product hasn't figured out, is that much of the change when it comes to viewership and the perception of WCW catching up or passing WWF comes to changes in the television industry having nothing to do with the products presented by either company. Throughout the modern, post-1984 history of wrestling, the WWF's traditional strength has been in syndication, while WCW has often held the advantage in cable because of the history of wrestling in the Saturday and Sunday afternoon slots on TBS dating back to the infancy of cable, with syndication declining in importance due to the proliferation of infomercials and other factors that make it cost prohibitive, and with all the key angles on Mondays, as opposed to on the weekend syndication. With Monday is simply a review of what happened, and these changes in television syndication more than any other factor are why territories aren't coming back, at least at this point in time, despite the yearnings of those who remember the good old days. It gave WCW a natural advantage in that the ball game was being played on their home court. Comparing cable ratings even during times when WCW was down and out in every other category, more often than not saw WCW actually ahead of WWF, just as it shows today. However, WWF no longer has the syndication advantage to make up for that deficit. In many ways this, along with the dropping of compensation, will hand the crown to WCW as the leader in wrestling television in terms of total viewership and to the national advertisers. According to WWF officials, they believe they'll maintain a network in excess of 100 stations. They currently have just over 150 even without compensation. However, it is the bigger markets that they'll be most vulnerable in, since those are the markets they'll lose without compensation. With Fox's baseball programming, both New York and Los Angeles syndication will be moved, with the New York Superstars show following the Saturday baseball game. Without compensation, it's doubtful either Fox station will keep WWF, and they'll be scrambling for weaker stations in the fall. If New York and Los Angeles turn out like San Francisco, in that they can't find a station to carry the shows, those shows will drop in importance once again, even though WWF officials have continually denied rumors floating that they are considering dumping syndication altogether. Many shows with long-standing histories, Phil Donahue being an example,
were no longer able to survive, once losing New York and San Francisco.
Obviously, the WWF recognizes all this and figures in its streamlined form of running maybe 150 to 175 domestic house shows, as opposed to nearly 1,000 in its heyday, with a strong concentration on pay-per-view, that this current upturn in business will continue. Kenta Kobashi has long been thought of as arguably the single greatest in-ring performer in the industry, and certainly he's been consistently in the top 3 for the past 5 years.
However, it wasn't until July 24 that Kobashi captured his first singles championship, All Japan's version of the World Heavyweight title, its Triple Crown, in a stunning upset of Akira Tao at Tokyo's Budokan Hall before a sellout 16,300 fans. Due to the traditional seniority system in All Japan, Kobashi has always ranked behind Mitsuharu Misawa and Toshiaki Kawada. Even though he started as roughly the same time as Tao because Tao was older, had a name from sumo wrestling before turning pro, and as time went on needed the extra push because Kobashi got over strong based purely on ability, Kobashi had never beaten Tao in a singles match. With Tao having just won the title in a surprise upset over Misawa 2 months earlier in Sapporo, the belief was Kobashi was among the series of wrestlers Tao was going to beat before eventually losing the crown to either Misawa or Steve Williams. However, for the second time this year, Giant Baba pulled the upset finish out of the bag in a Triple Crown title match with Kobashi scoring the pin, 27-25. Kobashi ended the match with one eye shut, apparently from a stiff kick to the face, and it was feared there might be problems with the orbital bone, but it was just a swollen eye. The match aired on All Japan's July 28 television show. Kobashi, now 29, is not expected to have a long reign as holder of the title that has to be considered either the first or second most prestigious title, because of how it is booked in that the champion always looks strong and there is no such thing as a gimmick finish, and also because of the credibility and quality of its recent champions and title matches, with Misawa being the closest thing to an old-style world champion in the current wrestling scene. In the world, WWF, arguably because of its worldwide scope, would be the other one. Eccentric sometimes wrestling promoter Herb Abrams passed away on the morning of July 23 from cardiac failure in what was reported by the New York Post as an apparent drug overdose. Abrams, who was 41, stopped breathing after being handcuffed by police in his office at 7 Penn Plaza in Manhattan after he was going on a spree bashing up furniture on several floors of the building with a baseball bat and pulling on fire alarms. At about 6 a.m., he was taken to St. Vincent's Hospital and was declared dead at about 7:30 a.m. Police were called about an emotionally disturbed person and arrived at 6:10 a.m. and found Abrams naked, covered with baby oil, with 2 women in the office. Abrams, who started a wrestling promotion called the Universal Wrestling Federation in 1989, was the lowest level of the food chain of wrestling promoters, with his reputation for stiffing wrestlers and others when it came to paying bills on his shows. He had prior arrests in several states, among them California, North Dakota, Colorado, Florida, and South Carolina, largely for skipping town after shows without paying bills. Abrams had also been arrested twice in recent months on drug possession, trespassing, and for attempting to attack and molest a woman in his Manhattan office. His most recent foray in wrestling was a live cable special on Sports Channel America called The Blackjack Brawl on September 25, 1994, from Las Vegas, headlined by Steve Williams vs. Sid Vicious and using major names such as Dan Spivey, Johnny Ace, Missy Hyatt, Bob Orton, Tony Halme, Cactus Jack, and Jimmy Snuka. The event, which drew just 228, paid in a 17,000-seat arena despite Abrams pulling a coup and getting Williams on the Jay Leno show to plug the event, was so bad on so many levels that despite a tiny viewing audience, was voted the worst major wrestling card in the Observer poll for that year. He had reopened his office and was working on sending wrestlers on a tour of Mexico at the time of his death. Police found cocaine and Valium in his system and believed he died of a drug overdose. Police had found Abrams with cocaine in his office in an April arrest when he was allegedly holding a woman hostage and robbing her, and he was charged in that incident with unlawful imprisonment, assault, and attempted rape in a case that was still pending. Abrams was a longtime wrestling fan in New York dating back to the days of superstar Billy Graham and Bruno Sammartino. He ran a clothing store and burst onto the wrestling scene in 1989 at a John Arezzi fans convention in New York, announcing the formation of his new federation that was going to put the WWF out of business. Abrams named a list of wrestlers, many if not most of whom he had never spoken with, that were going to headline for his fledgling group, including Bruiser Brody, who had died 1 year earlier, and saying that his booker would be Blackjack Mulligan, who at the time was in prison for counterfeiting. He claimed to have signed exclusive contracts with many of the top names in All Japan, who at the time weren't working in the US, saying he'd loan them to Japan in their time off. Some people even took what he said seriously. However, Abrams did manage to get television on some cable stations, and had some major league talent from the start, including Williams, Bam Bam Bigelow and Paul Orndorff, and even had Bruno Sammartino at one point doing his television commentary. He started stiffing some wrestlers he was mad at on pay almost immediately, among them being Honky Tonk Man, Louis Spicolli, and Bill Anderson, a practice he'd later become known for. He built up for a pay-per-view show on June 9, 1991 at the Manatee Civic Center in Palmetto, Florida, with Williams vs. Bigelow on top, which drew about 550 fans live but was far from the worst pay-per-view show in history, even though the buy rate was among the lowest ever. After that time, he'd disappear from the scene for a while, then return running a few more tapings, disappear, and the trend continued for the past 5 years. To his credit, he pulled off several major coups for a promoter of his level, such as a fair amount of cable penetration at times for his television show, more than other established groups that ran regularly were able to do. He did run a pay-per-view show that wasn't all that bad and was able to con a major casino into co-promoting a television special, which was all that bad, in Las Vegas. We've got a few details when it comes to upcoming major shows.
The World Wrestling Federation's first pay-per-view after SummerSlam will be on September 22 from the Core State Spectrum in Philadelphia, with a listed double main event of Shawn Michaels and Jose Lothario vs. Davey Boy Smith and Jim Cornette, and an IC title match with Ahmed Johnson vs. Vader. On paper, those matches don't appear to anything that is going to spike a buy rate. Although Cornette can build up a program as well as almost anyone in the business, there's some question as to whether he has the kind of heat, since he's done so many pratfalls and been the butt of so many jokes, that would make people buy a pay-per-view to see him beaten up, particularly since Lothario has little name value outside of South Texas and he's done little at this point to be the beloved older legend fans want to see kick the young punk's butt. WCW has added 2 matches to the lineup listed last week for the August 15 Clash of Champions television special, Medusa vs. Bull Nakano, and Randy Savage vs. Meng. Doug Furnas is also scheduled to debut on this show. Although few remember this, Furnas actually broke into wrestling in Knoxville in an angle with Kevin Sullivan, and the two have been friends since that time. This brings a total of at least 10 matches to the live television special from Denver. Even if the show is increased to 2.5 hours in length from the normal 2-hour Clash, we believe that's the case, but it hasn't been confirmed. 10 matches seems a bit much, particularly since the lineup is loaded with workers who don't need to be rushed. UWF International of Japan held a press conference this past week to announce the second baseball stadium show in a row, this being its biggest card of the year on September 11 at the 46,000-seat Jingu Stadium in Tokyo. As was already known, the first ever singles match between Nobuhiko Takada vs. Genichiro Tenryu will headline. Other matches announced were Yoji Anjo vs. Kimo under what is being billed as UFC rules, Yui Sano vs. Shinya Hashimoto, Masahito Kakihara vs. Kensuke Sasaki. This will probably be Sasaki's chance to get the win back since Sasaki put Kakihara over last October at the Tokyo Dome show. Jushin Liger vs. Kazushi Sakuraba, plus 4 more singles matches involving Yoshihiro Takayama, the original Tiger Mask, Satoru Sayama, Hiromitsu Kanehara, and Kenichi Yamamoto. The WWF returned to this area on July 25 at the Cow Palace for a typical house show as part of a West Coast swing. The show was uneventful, with the main topic of conversation being the number of fans kicked out for being out of control. As you'd expect, the best crowd reactions were for Shawn Michaels and Undertaker, although neither drew a phenomenal reaction. The heat level would be best described as average. The crowd was generally older, although there were kids, than one would expect, particularly the front row, which looked almost like a reunion of people who had been attending Cow Palace shows since the Shire days. There were a ton of banners around ringside, and not all of them complimentary. There were several pro WCW banners, including things like Watch Nitro, and a guy in a Hogan mask with pro Hogan banners. There were a surprising amount of pro Vader banners, although I wouldn't describe it as a heel crowd since most of the faces were cheered, but there were enough fans booing Michaels in the main event that it unnerved him, and he taunted them a lot in his post-match routine. My reaction when the show was over is that I thought the last house show I'd seen in Tijuana was one hell of a lot better after seeing this card than I did when that show was over. Before the show they announced that Ultimate Warrior, Jake Roberts and Ahmed Johnson wouldn't be there and offered refunds through the end of the third match. Match 1. Justin Bradshaw pinned Bob Holly. Match 2. In the Four Corners match, the Smoking Guns won in 21:58. This match was both good and terrible. It was good in that Skip was the best wrestler on the entire show, although the crowd never got into the body donnas as babyfaces. It was bad in that parts of the match were excruciatingly bad, particularly a 5:30 long segment where literally nothing happened. At 4:55, Henry Godwin pinned Leif Cassidy with a slop drop, eliminating the New Rockers. Cassidy and Skip worked great together, so it was a shame to see him out so fast. Shortly after this point, Phineas was in with Skip and they did a spot where both tagged a gun and both did the Fargo strut out of the ring. This left Billy vs. Bart,
and I kid you not, they sat in the ring with their arms folded and did nothing. I guess the idea was to build heat on them as the lone heels left, but it just killed the match. Finally, at the 12-minute mark, Billy tagged Phineas and the match restarted. Billy Gunn is improving in persona and work, but Bart is way behind. At 15:07, the Godwins were counted out when Phineas chased Sonny, who naturally was over as a total babyface and far more over than anyone else in the match, to the back. The last few minutes had Zip selling until making the hot tag. Skip kissed Sonny after he had put Bart down. With Skip's back turned, Billy switched with Bart, and when Skip turned around, Billy pinned him with an inside cradle. After seeing so many Four Corners matches from different promotions, most of which are unwieldy and disappointing, I can't wait to move on to the next hot gimmick. 1.5 star. Match 3. Steve Austin pinned Savio Vega in 9:22 after a low blow. Austin got a babyface reaction. People reacted to him as if he were a star, which was something of a surprise. 2 stars. Match 4. Owen Hart pinned Aldo Montoya with a spin kick in 4:32. Fans weren't into Montoya at all, but the work was decent.
After the match, I guess to satisfy fans who were upset about Roberts not being there, Montoya gave Hart a DDT, which got no pop at all. 1/2 star. Match 5. Undertaker pinned Mankind in 12:24 with a tombstone. The finish got a big pop. It was a slow match with some brawling. 1.5 star. Yokozuna, subbing for Johnson, pinned Goldust in 1:11. Yokozuna has gained a lot of weight since the last time he was around. He looked like he ate most of Duke University. The guy could no longer move at all.
He did a Samoan drop, a leg drop and bonsai, and that was the match. The idea was that since there was a sub in a key match, you put the babyface over so the fans aren't as unhappy about the top face not being there. Dud. Match 7. Mark Marrow pinned Hunter Hearst Helmsley in 5:23. The match was fine while it lasted, but it was way too short for these two. 1.75 stars. Match 8. Psycho Sid pinned Davey Boy Smith in 3:49. Sid's one bump came from a suplex, and Owen Hart had to distract Sid for Davey to gain the advantage. Sid immediately came back with a power bomb for the pin. Fans were chanting for Sid, but it wasn't an overwhelming chant, although the biggest of the show. Dud. Match 9. Shawn Michaels pinned Vader with a super kick in 6:59.
Both worked hard and there was nothing wrong with the moves or execution, but it was too short for a world title match and there was no build at all to the match.
Michaels was the second best worker on the show behind Skip. Jose Lothario punched Jim Cornette at the finish. The finishing move was totally unconvincing. A trivia note that among those in attendance at the show was the mother of Leon White, who lives in Modesto, about 2 hours away from the Cow Palace, and this is probably only the second or third time she's ever seen her son wrestle live. 2.25 stars. It was announced that the next area show would be on January 10, 1997 at the San Jose Arena. Phew. The biggest house show of the weekend was 2 nights later at the Anaheim Arrowhead Pond, drawing 8,050 fans and $139,640 for the first time in the building since WrestleMania. They made a few booking changes for that show, largely having to do with having a return date booked in the building on October 9th.
As has been the case in most cities, the Body Donnas were put over in the Four Corners match.
Since the main event on the Anaheim return was booked as Michaels vs. Goldust, they couldn't put Yokozuna over Goldust, so Goldust got the quick win. To build heat for that match, Goldust interfered in the Michaels-Vader match, which was put on before intermission since actions in that match were leading to the top 3 matches on the next show, ending with a DQ finish. With the 2-on-1 taking place on Michaels, Sid did the run-in to set up Sid vs. Vader on the return show.
They also announced, since they ran spots as well during that match, that Cornette would wrestle Lothario in a singles match. Undertaker Mankind was moved from before intermission to the final match on the show since they needed to put the main event on early so they could build the grudges and then announce the top matches for the return. We have a couple of notes regarding our recent feature on former Olympians who went on to pro wrestling. As it turns out, we left out a very important figure in the story in that he's the only person ever to both win a gold medal in the Olympics and a major World Heavyweight Wrestling Championship. Thanks to former wrestler and longtime historian Steve Neese of Muscle Mag International for this info. Henri Deglon won the Greco-Roman gold medal in the unlimited division in the 1924 Olympics representing France. He was later involved in a pro wrestling controversy about the world heavyweight title. On May 4, 1931, Deglon wrestled champion Ed Strangler Lewis in Montreal. If you go back to the piece in the July 8 Observer, you'll notice in the section on Ed Don George, when Boston area promoter Paul Bowser, who had gotten into the championship picture as a key figure with Lewis when he had his wrestler,
Gus Sonnenberg so hot that Lewis and Billy Sandow, who controlled a version of the title, wanted the title on him to feud with Lewis, which brought Bowser into the trust. George was given the title by Bowser without telling either Lewis or Sandow after Sonnenberg had been embarrassed on a busy street corner when a no-name middleweight wrestler who was friends with rival promotion star Jim Londos beat up Sonnenberg in front of witnesses that got a ton of pub and that the world champion wrestler was beaten up on a busy street by a small no-name guy. Bowser put the title on George, who was in the Olympics, with the idea he wanted the title on a guy who could handle himself against an attack out of the ring or a double cross in the ring. Lewis apparently got revenge on April 14, 1931 by telling George he was going to win the title that night in the ring, and with Lewis' rep, even as good a wrestler as George was, he didn't challenge him and voluntarily dropped the title at Lewis' request, which was a double cross on Bowser. It was only 3 weeks later that Bowser got his revenge, booking Lewis to defend the title against Deglon in Montreal. Stories about this match differ. According to Luthez recollections in his book, after the second fall of the match that Lewis was under the impression he was going to win, Deglon bit himself on the arm until he drew blood while in the dressing room. In those days the wrestlers returned to the dressing room between falls and the main events for several minutes in order for the promoter to make money selling concessions. He kept it covered and in the third fall, screamed, showed the ref the teeth marks, and the ref saw all the blood and disqualified Lewis, and declared Deglon champion. Others have claimed that the Battle of the Bite finish was a worked finish that everyone involved knew about beforehand as simply a gimmick finish for controversy purposes and changing the title without Lewis having to do a job. As it turned out, that was the final split between the Lewis camp and the Bowser camp, which lends credence to the Thez stories being the accurate one, as Bowser recognized Deglon as world champion with Boston and Montreal as his main cities. But Lewis continued to be recognized as champion in some other cities and basically took off for Europe. Deglon held his version of the title until February 9, 1933 when he lost to George in Boston. Also, Ken Patera didn't place fourth in the 1972 Olympics, as he missed all of his press attempts, and while this isn't confirmed, Harold Sakata may have been in the 1948 Olympics instead of the 1952 Olympics as listed in the article. We've also had several questions regarding Laurent Soucy since the article came out. Soucy wrestled for a few years in the early 80s in the American Wrestling Alliance, WWF and Stampede Wrestling among other places. Soucy was a world-class amateur wrestler, placing as high as second in the 1978 World Cup and sixth in the 1979 World Championships in freestyle at 198, and when he started wrestling was billed as being part of the 1980 Olympic team, but he actually wasn't on that team as Ben Peterson was the U.S. rep in that weight in the boycotted Olympics. Results: July 15, Ciudad Madero Triple Mania 4C, 12,000. Cardinal and King Boy B Novato I and Acercio are 15 and Manrak B Loverboy and Dragon Boy Mascara de Sagrada Jr. and Super Muñequito and Mini Frisbee B Espectritos 1 and 2 and La Parquita Elimination Match, La Parca and Winners and Super Colo and El Mexicano B Jerry Estrada and Fishman and Indiano 5 and My Flowers, Car vs. Car, Rey Mysterio Jr. B Juventud Guerrera, Parejas Increíbles, Pero Aguayo and Los Villanos 3 and 4 B Octagon and Psicosis and Cybernetico DQ, Bull Terrier Chain Match, Pierre Roth Jr. B Conan, Cage Match Loser Unmasks, Los Payasos and Caras La Momia B Mascara Sagrada Jr. and Blue Demon Jr. and Tinieblas Jr. and Alcon Dorado Jr., Dorado unmasked as Marco Antonio Olmos, 27. July 16 Mexico City Arena Coliseo, EMLL, Ciclinchito Ramirez and Mascara de Sagrada B Guerrerito and Damiencito, Escudero Rojo and Reyes Velos B Babe Richard and Alacron Americo Rocca and Karloff Lagarde Jr., and Alcon Negro Jr. B El Hijo del Solitario, and Mr. Niebla and Olympus, Bestia Salvaje, and Chicago Express, and Damian El Guerrero B Olympico and Dandy and Ringo Mendoza, Lizmark and Silver King and La Fiera B Grand Marcus Jr. and El Hijo del Gladiador and Dr. Wagner Jr. July 19 Chalmette, Louisiana, CWF, 300 Twister B Sexy Boy Busby, Lord Humongous B Tommy Martinelli, Joe Kane and Kevin Northcutt B Scott Armstrong and Tasmanian Devil, Hard Time Express B Half-Breed and Doink the Clown, Dusty Wolf, Bad Medicine B Cajun Connection, Davey Rich B Tommy Rich DQ, Junkyard Dog B Bunkhouse Buck. July 19 Inverness, Florida, Indiana, The Wizard, Kevin Caitlin, D Tommy Wright, Malia Hasaka B Blaze, Charlie Lee Jr. B Buddy Valentine, Warlord B Dick Slater DQ. July 19 Willingboro, New Jersey, National Wrestling Federation, 500, Gino Caruso B King Kala, Katie Kincaid B Catra, Larry Winters and Ron Shaw B Lost Boys, Tony Atlas B Lumberjack, Nikolai Volkov B Mad Russian. July 20 San Francisco, Incredibly Strange Wrestling, 650 Vivonica B Linda Fatal, El Thing B Skeletor, Ku Klux Klan B El Kaltiki, Donovan Morgan B Dwayne Jones, Dr. Loco B. El Acidoso Louisiana Chingona B. Poor White Trash, Bonehead B. Dinty Moore Skeletor B. Thing DQ, La Migra B. El Mexicana Blanca and Bomba. July 20 Bayou Battery Alabama, Unified Championship Wrestling, 300, Gladiator B. Sexy Boy Busby Cousin Boudreaux B. Motor City Madman, Max Payne Kerr Bourbon Street Brawler No. 1, Doink the Clown, Dusty Wolf, B. Bourbon Street Brawler No. 2, Tommy Rich B. Marcel Pringle, Joey Barrett Kerr Tyrone the Tyrant, Al Savage B. Boris Shukov. July 21 Mexico City Arena Coliseo, EMLL, Kundra and Supremo to B. Sakura and Sombra de Plata, Reyes Veloz and Escudero Rojo and America B. Pegaso and Zumbito and Alacran, Angel de Plata and Atlantico and Ciclone Ramirez B. Nuevo Lynx and Guerrero Maya and Moger, Atlantis and Dandy and Rayo de Jalisco Jr. B. Felino, and Apollo Dantes and Black Warrior, CMLL middleweight title, El Satanico B. Lizmark. July 21 Marrero, Louisiana, Cajun Wrestling Federation, 285, Blade Boudreaux B. Lord Humongous, and Man Not Original, B. Half-Breed, Taz Not Original, B. Joe Kane, Carl Fergie B. Tommy Martinelli, Doink the Clown, Dusty Wolf, B. Al Savage, Hard Time expressed her Cajun connection, Tommy Rich DDQ Davey Rich. July 22 Seattle WWF Monday Night Raw tapings, 6,755, Salvatore Sincere B. Billy Two Eagles, Sid B. Justin Bradshaw DQ Mark Marrow B. The Goon Mankind B. Freddie Joe Floyd, Goldust B. Barry Horowitz, WWF Tag Titles, Smoking Guns NC Ahmed Johnson and Shawn Michaels, Davey Boy Smith B. Henry Godwin Vader B. Marrow, Steve Austin B. Undertaker Core, New Rockers NC Body Donnas, Johnson 1 Battle Royal Sid B. Smith, Farouk Azad, Ron Simmons, B. Skip Crush B. Savio Vega, Godwins B. TL Hopper and Who, Jim Neidhart, WWF Title, Michaels B. Owen Hart DQ, WWF Title, Michaels B. Vader, IC Title Johnson Karazad Undertaker B. Mankind. July 23 Atani Sun Beach, Tokyo Pro Wrestling, 65,000/Free Beach Fireworks Festival Show, Masanobu Kurisu B. Hokuto, Brasso de Oro and Brasso de Plata B. Tamura and Shocker, Gecko B. Astro Ray Jr., Black Waizama 2 Cold Scorpio, and Akihiko Masuda B. Billy Black and Great Kabuki, Shigeo Okamura 1 Battle Royal, Abdullah the Butcher and Daiko Kubo Benkei B. Kishin Kawabata and Takashi Ishikawa. July 23 Yakima, Washington WWF Superstars Tapings, 2,922 Non-Squash Results, Salvatore Sincere B. Billy Two Eagles, Sid B. Brooklyn Brawler, Aldo Montoya B. Jerry Lawler, Undertaker B. Who, TL Hopper B. Barry Horowitz, Mark Marrow B. Who, Marrow B. Steve Austin DQ Freddie Joe Floyd B. Zeb, Sid B. Marty Jannetty, Floyd and Savio Vega B. Justin Bradshaw and Zeb Crush B. Montoya, Sid B. Davey Boy Smith, Undertaker B. Mankind DQ, WWF Title, Shawn Michaels B. Vader. July 23 Orlando Disney Studios WCW Saturday Night Tapings, 600 Full House / All Freebies, B. Malenko B. David Taylor Ric Flair and Arnold Anderson and Chris Benoit and Steve McMichael B. Jim Powers and Chavo Guerrero Jr. and American Males, Sting and Randy Savage B. Nasty Boys, The Giant B. Booty Man. July 23 Kingsport, Tennessee, National Championship Wrestling, Spoilers B. Chuck Carroll and Chris Steelheart, Sweet Afney B. Stanley, Scott Sterling B. Bo James, Skyfire D. Eddie Golden, Jeff Tankerley and Shannon Castle B. Bad PD, Tim Horner B. Bunkhouse Buck. July 23 Ybor City, Florida, Southeastern Pro Wrestling Federation, Johnny Attitude B. Panama Jack, Jim Magnum B. Buddy Valentine, Billy Mack and Chris Nelson B. TR Ranger and Mike Marcello, Jimmy Del Rey B. Indio, Cuban Assassin B. Freight Train Freddy, Manny Fernandez, Not Original B. Pepe Prado. July 24 Tokyo Budokan Hall, All Japan, 16,300 sellout, Rob Van Dam and Takao Mori and Yoshinari Ogawa B. Yoshinobu Kanemaru and Satoru Asako and Kentaro Shiga 1023, Brian Dian and Bobby Duncombe Jr. B. Chris and Mark Youngblood 857, Jumbo Tsuruta and Rusher Kimura and Mitsuo Momoto B. Masao Inoue and Mighty Inoue and Haruka Agin 951. PWF Junior Title Tsuyoshi Kikuchi B. Masafuchi to win Title 1858, Steve Williams and Johnny Ace and Johnny Smith B. Stan Hansen and The Patriot and Monokia Mossman 1154, Mitsuharu Masawa and Jun Akiyama and Tamon Honda B. Giant Baba and Giant Kimala 2 and Ryukaku Izumida 1724, Gary Albright B. Toshiaki Kawada 1218, Triple Crown, Kena Kobashi B. Akira Tao to win Title 2725. July 24 Cincinnati WCW, 3559, Alex Wright B. Disco Inferno Dog Collar Match, Public Enemy B. Nasty Boys, Dean Malenko B. Eddie Guerrero, WCW Tag Titles, Rick and Scott Steiner B. Harlem Heat to win titles, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash B. Sting and Lex Luger DQ non-title, Randy Savage B. Ric Flair. July 24 Kiryu New Japan, 2150 Kunyaki Kobayashi B Tatsuhito Takawa and Akira Nagami B Nobukazu Hirai, Tadao Yasuda and Osamu Nishimura B Akatoshi Saito and Tatsutoshi Goto, Hiroyoshi Tenzan B Michiyoshi Ohara, Hiro Saito and Masachono B Riki Choshu and Yuji Nagata, Tatsumi Fujinami and Shiro Koshinaka B Nobutaka Arai, and Koki Kitahara. July 24 Tokyo Korakuen Hall Tokyo Pro Wrestling 1150 Shocker Masanobu Kurisu B Brasso de Oro and Brasso de Plata, Masao Orihara B Tamura, Shigeo Okamura and Yoshihiro Takayama B Great Kabuki and Akihiko Masuda, Black Waizama B Sebu Court, Takashi Ishikawa and Kishin Kawabata and Yoji Anjo B Abdullah the Butcher and Daiko Kubo Benkei and Billy Black. Benkei 1 Battle Royal. July 24 Brooklyn, New York, Universal Superstars of America Golden Greek B Tony Rambo, Ken Sweeney B Duke Snyder, Rhino Powers DDQ East Village Riot Squad Virgil B Gino Caruso, Bam Bam Bigelow B Typhoon, Bodyguard for Hire B Christopher Michaels. July 24 Wakayonagi Michinoku Pro 232 Wellington Wilkins Jr. B Naohiro Hoshikawa Super Delphin and Grand Naniwa B Kendo and Pilato Suicida, World Lightweight Title Johnny Saint B Masato Yakashiji, Tiger Mask and Gran Omada and Great Sasuke B Shiryu and Dick Togo and Men's Teo DQ. July 25 Oyama, New Japan, 1850 Sellout Nobukazu Hirai B Yutaka Yoshi, Hiranagami and Akatoshi Saito B Tatsuhito Takawa and Tatada Yasuda, Hiroyoshi Tenzan and Masachono B Michiyoshi Ohara and Tatsutoshi Goto, Shiro Koshinaka B Hiro Saito, Riki Choshu and Yuji Nagata B Nobutaka Arai and Koki Kitahara, Tatsumi Fujinami and Osamu Nishimura B Kengo Kimura and Kunyaki Kobayashi. July 25 Shimizu Tokyo Pro Wrestling, 725, Brasso de Oro and Brasso de Plata B Masanobu Kurisu and Shocker, Astro Ray Jr. B Akihiko Masuda, Black Waizama and Shigeo Okamura B Billy Black and Great Kabuki, Tomorrow 1 Battle Royal, Sabubi Gecko, Abdullah the Butcher and Daiko Kubo Benkei B Takashi Ishikawa and Kishin Kawabata. July 25 Yokaichi MMW, Nanjio Hayato B Okamoto, Crusher Matamari and Shark, Tsuchiya B Aki Kambayashi and Kaori Nakayama, Hisakatsu Oya B Tetsuhiro Kuroda, Super Leather and Headbanger and Toriyu B Taka Michinoku and Riki Fuji and Shuichi Funaki, Megumi Kudo B Miwasato, Masato Tanaka and Katsutoshi Niyama B the Gladiator and Alcone Negro Jr., Street Fight, Wing Kanemura and Haido and Hideki Hasaka B Mr. Pogo and Koji Nakagawa and Gasaku Goshigawara. July 25 Koji Eva 150 Takeshi Sato B Jun Nago Kaami Motokawa B Kadota, Katsumi Hirano and Tuta the Turtle B Ryo Mai and Akinori Sukioka Orito B Feline Nito Tiger Jeet Singh and Freddy Krueger B Keisuke Yamada and Keizo Matsuda, WWA Lightweight Title, Hiroshi Itakura B Flying Kid Ichihara, Tarzan Goto and Mr. Ganasuke B Takashi Okano, and Leatherface. July 26 Muncie, Indiana WCW, 3500, Alex Wright B Disco Inferno 3 1/4 stars, Dog Collar Match, Public Enemy B Nasty Boys 1 1/2 star, Dean Malenko B Eddie Guerrero 3 3/4 stars, WCW Tag Titles, Rick and Scott Steiner B Harlem Heat 2 3/4 stars, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall B Sting and Lex Luger DQ 2 1/2 stars, non-title, Randy Savage B Ric Flair 2 3/4 stars. July 26 Kanazawa, New Japan, 3800 Sellout Nobutaka Araya B Yutaka Yoshi, Tadao Yasuda B Kunyaki Kobayashi, Tatsutoshi Goto and Michiyoshi Ohara B Tatsuhito Takawa and Osamu Nishimura, Hiro Saito B Akatoshi Saito, Akira Nagami and Kengo Kimura B Arashi and Nobukazu Hirai, Tatsumi Fujinami and Shiro Koshinaka B Masachono and Hiroyoshi Tenzan, Riki Choshu and Yuji Nagata B Hiroshi Hazi and Kensuke Sasaki. July 26 Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, ECW, 600, El Puerto Rican B Supernova, Devon Dudley B Hack Myers, ECW TV title, Shane Douglas B Bubba Ray Dudley, Taz B Sandman, Gangstas B Devin Storm and Damian Kane, Brian Lee B LA Smooth, ECW tag titles, Eliminators B Mikey Whipwreck and Chris Jericho, Terry Gordy and Tommy Dreamer B Bruise Brothers. July 26 Mexico City Arena Mexico EMLL Escudero Rojo and Reyes Veloz B Rio Jr. and Principe Frankie Americo Rocca and Mocho Cota and Karloff Lagarde Jr. B Olympus and Fantastic and Alacron Rambo and Cajos and Chicago Express B Olympico and Mr. Niebla and El Brazo, Guerrero de la Muerte and Felino and Ray Bucanero B Silver King and Dandy and Mascara Magica, Atlantis and Lizmark Jr. B El Satanico and Black Warrior and Apollo Dantes. July 26 Kyoto FMW, 2200 Sellout, Hideki Hasaka be Okamoto, Katsutoshi Niyama be Headbanger, Nanjo Hayato and Riki Fuji and Hisakatsu Oya be Taka Michinoku and Shuichi Funaki and Shiryu, Aki Kambayashi and Kaori Nakayama, and Megumi Kudo be Miwasato and Crusher Maidamari and Shark Tsuchiya.
The Gladiator be Alcone Negro Jr. Haido and Wing Kanimura be Tetsuhiro Kuroda and Masato Tanaka, Street Fight, Terry Funk and Super Leather be Koji Nakagawa and Mr. Pogo.
July 26 Tokyo Korakuen Hall, Kiao Dojo 1200. Daisuke Ikeda and Berto Diesel be Satoshi Yoniyama and Yuki Ishikawa, Hiromichi Fuyuki and Geto and Jado be Yuji Yasurioka and Takashi Okamura and Masaki Mochizuki, Koki Kiyahara be Scott Damore, Koji Kao be Geza Kalman Jr. July 26 Yahata Haim, Eva, 200 Morinaga be Shogunuma, Emi Motokawa be Kadoda, Kudo the Turtle be Takeshi Sato, Keizo Matsuda and Jun Nagoka be Ryo Maik and Akinori Tsukioka, Freddy Krueger and Tiger Jeet Singh be Katsumi Hirano and Leatherface, Burrito be Feline Nito, Flying Kid Ichihara and Mr. Ganasuke and Tarzan Goto be Keisuke Yamada and Hiroshi Itakura, and Takashi Okano. July 26 Hoya All Japan Women, Mifukawa be Takahashi Mariko Yoshida be Genki Misae, Mima Shimoda and Atsuko Mita be Yoshiko Tamura and Takako Inoue Yumiko Hata be Tashio Yamada, Asia Kong and Kyoko Inoue and Tomoko Watanabe be Kaoru Ito and Reggie Bennett and Minami Toyota. July 26 Eizu Wakamatsu Michinoku Pro 377, Kendo be Masato Yakashiji, Pilato Suicida d Johnny Saint, Grand Naniwa and Super Delphin be Naohiro Hoshikawa and Tiger Mask, Great Sasuke and Wellington Wilkins Jr. be Dick Togo and Shiryu DQ, WWA Junior LT. Title Grand Hamada be Men's Teo. July 27 Anaheim, California Arrowhead Pond WWF, 8050 Justin Bradshaw be Bob Holly. Bodydonna's 1-4 team elimination match over New Rockers, Godwins, and Smoking Guns, Sid be Davey Boy Smith, Owen Hart be Aldo Montoya, WWF title, Shawn Michaels be Vader DQ, Steve Austin be Sabio Vega, Goldust be Yokozuna, Mark Merrow be Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Undertaker be Mankind. July 27 Dayton, Ohio WCW 4, 100 thirds, 100 paid, Alex Wright be Disco Inferno 2.5 stars, Doug Collar match, Nasty Boys be Public Enemy 3.5 stars, Eddie Guerrero be Dean Malenko 4 stars, WCW tag titles, Harlem Heat be Rick and Scott Steiner to regain titles 3 stars.
Kevin Nash and Scott Hall be Lex Luger and Sting DQ 3.75 stars. Non-title cage match, Randy Savage be Ric Flair 3.75 stars.
July 27 Nagoya International Center, New Japan, 2,320 sellout, Akatoshi Saito be Yutaka Yoshi, Michiyoshi Ohara be Tatsuhiro Takawa, Tada Yasuda be Akira Nagami, Tatsutoshi Goto be Hiro Saito, Nobukazu Hirai and Koki Kitahara be Kunyaki Kobayashi and Kengo Kimura, Shiro Koshinaka be Nobutaka Araya, Tatsumi Fujinami be Osamu Nishimura, Masachono and Hiroyoshi Tenzan be Riki Choshu and Yuji Nagata. July 27 Warwick, Pennsylvania, ECW, 860 Taz and Bill Alfonso be Sandman and Todd Gordon, Supernova be El Puerto Ricano, Hack Myers be Devon Storm, Mikey Whipwreck be Stevie Richards, ECW tag titles, Eliminators be Pitbull No. 2 and Bubba Ray Dudley, Gangstas be Bruise Brothers, ECW TV title,
Shane Douglas be Chris Jericho, Taz and Brian Lee be Terry Gordy and Tommy Dreamer.
July 27 Kawasaki, Pro Wrestling Fujiwara Gumi Dick Murdoch Benefit Show 459, Ultraman Jr. and Phoenix and Kid be Archangel and Blazer and the Greek, Onryo be Figaro, Masashi Aoyagi and Shigeo Okamura and C. Masayoshi Motegi and Hirofumi Miura, Shinichi Nakano be Kamikaze, Yoshiaki Fujiwara be Tatsuo Nakano. July 27 Tokyo Korakuen Hall LLPW, 1500, Soro Okino be Wada Mizuki Endo be Keiko Aono, Harley Saito be Michiko Nagashima, Shinobu Kandori be Eagle Sawai LLPW 6-woman titles, Yasha Kuranai and Carol Midori and Mikiko Futagami be Michiko Omukai and Norio Tatano and Rumi Kazama.
July 27 Sakata Michinoku Pro 426, Super Delphin be Kendo, Shiryu and Men's Teo and Dick Togo be Naohiro Hoshikawa and Tiger Mask and Gran Hamada, WWA middleweight title, Great Sasuke be Pilato Suicida to win title.
July 27 Utsunomiya All Japan Women, Ri Tamada be Shinza, Yoshiko Tamura be
Nakanishi Genki Misae be Yumi Fukawa, Manami Toyota and Mariko Yoshida be Mima Shimoda and Yumiko Hata, Tashio Yamada be Tomoko Watanabe, Etsuko Mita and Kyoko Inoue and Takako Inoue be Asia Kong and Reggie Bennett and Kaoru Ito. July 27 Obihiro Big Japan Pro Wrestling, Crusher Takahashi be Satoru Shiga, Ishiro Yaguchi be Yuichi Taniguchi, Yoshihiro Tajiri be Yosuke Kobayashi, Dr. Wagner Jr. be Masahiko Kochi, Bull Payne be Bruiser Okamoto,
Seiji Yamakawa and Kendo Nagasaki and Jason Knight beat Mighty Kodiak and Mitsuhiro Matsunaga and Shoji Nakamaki. July 27 Maebashi Tokyo Pro Wrestling, Astro Ray Jr. and Billy Black beat Brasso de Oro and Brasso de Plata, Gecko beat Shocker, Black Waizama beat Akihiko Masuda, Great Kabuki beat Kishin Kawabata, Sabu beat Tamura, Abdullah the Butcher and Daiko Kubo Benkei beat Shigeo Okamura and Takashi Ishikawa. July 27 Vienna, Austria, CWA 1000. August Smile beat Drew McDonald, Tony St. Clair beat Bruiser Mostino, Mantor, DQ, Rambo and Michael Kovac beat Brian Armstrong and Dan Collins, David Finley beat Ulf Herman, CWA middleweight title, Franz Schumann beat Kendo Kashin, New Japan's Tokumitsu Ishizawa. July 27 Knoxville, Tennessee, Tennessee Mountain Wrestling, Stan Lee beat Chris Steelhart, KC Thunder Kurt James Blevins, Eddie Golden and Steve Sky fired Kurt Rick Savage and Dave Jericho, Tracy Smothers, Freddie Joe Floyd, B. Rick Savage, Mongolian Stomper and Chris Powers B. 8 Ball Jones and Mr. Olympian, Bunkhouse Buck B. Dirty White Boy, TJ Hopper, to win TMW title. July 28 Osaka Rinkai Sports Center, New Japan, 2250 Nobutaka Araya B. Kunyaki Kobayashi, Iranagami B. Tatsuhito Takawa, Osamu Nishimura B. Yakatoshi Saito, Michiyoshi Ohara B. Hiro Saito, Kengo Kimura B. Tada Yasuda, Koki Kitahara and Nobukazu Hirai B. Yuji Nagata and Tatsumi Fujinami, Masa Chono and Hiroyoshi Tenzan B. Shiro Koshinaka and Tatsutoshi Goto. July 28 Kobe UWFI, 2100 Sellout Hiromitsu Kanehara B. 100% Machine, Masahito Kakihara B. Kenichi Yamamoto, Yui Sano B. 150% Machine, Yoshihiro Takayama B. Billy Scott, Nobuhiko Takada B. 200% Machine, Yoji Anjo B. Kazushi Sakuraba. July 28 Tokyo Korakuen Hall All Japan Women, 1650 Kawamoto D. Wakizawa, Genki Misai B. Takahashi, Rita Matabe Yumi Fukawa, Tsuko Mita and Tashio Yamadabe Yoshiko Tamura and Mariko Yoshida, Kyoko Inoue B. Shaparita Asari, Manami Toyota and Mima Shimoda B. Kaoru Ito and Tomoko Watanabe, Reggie Bennett B. Asia Kong, Yumiko Hata B. Takako Inoue. July 28 Sapporo Big Japan Pro Wrestling, Crusher Takahashi B. Yosuke Kobayashi, Yuichi Taniguchi B. Masahiko Kochi, Mighty Kodiak and Bullpain B. Satoru Shiga and Bruiser Okamoto, CMLLT. HWT. Title Dr. Wagner Jr. B. Yoshihiro Tajiri to win title, Barbed Wire Board Street Fight, Kendo Nagasaki and Jason Knight B. Ichiro Yaguchi and Mitsuhiro Matsunaga, Barbed Wire Board Street Fight, Seiji Yamakawa B. Shoji Nakamaki. July 28 Hashioe Tokyo Pro Wrestling, 615 Akihiko Masuda B. Astro Ray Jr., Shocker B. Brasso de Oro, Black Waizama B. Tamura, Great Kabuki B. Billy Black, Sabu B. Gecko, Shigeo Okamura and Kishin Kawabata and Takashi Ishikawa B. Abdullah the Butcher and Daiko Kubo Benkei and Brasso de Plata. July 28 Hatohira, Eva 2,500/Fairgrounds Festival Show Takeshi Sato and Tutor the Turtle B. Akinori Tsukioka and Jun Nago Kaami Motokawa B. Kadoto, Burrito B. Nito, Tiger Jeet Singh and Freddy Krueger B. Hiroshi Itakura and Katsumi Hirano, Keisuke Yamada B. Ryo Maik, Tarzan Goto and Mr. Ganasuke and Flying Kid Ichihara B. Leatherface, and Takashi Okano and Keizo Matsuda. July 28 Toa Michinoku Pro 213, Grand Naniwa and now Hiro Hoshikawa B. Tiger Mask and Masato Yakashiji, Johnny St. D. Men's Teo, Kendo and Grand Hamada B. Dick Togo and Shiryu DQ, Super Delphin and Wellington Wilkins Jr. B. Great Sasuke and Pilato Suicida. July 29 Orlando Disney WCW Monday Nitro taping, 450 Full House/all freebies, Jim Duggan B. Mike Enos 3 stars, Sting and Randy Savage and Lex Luger NC Steve McMichael and Chris Benoit and Ric Flair 1 3/4 stars, Rick and Scott Steiner B. High Voltage 1/4 star, Eddie Guerrero B. Big Bubba 2 stars, WCW title The Giant B. Greg Valentine. Special thanks to Larry Goodman, Adam Pennison, Paul Spiegel, Greg John, James Stanios, James Titus, Georgianne Macropoulos, Dominic Valenti, Dan Paris, Travis Edgeworth, G.W. Graham, Sarah Moore, David Milliken, Ken Dusaev and McCloskey, Faye Ferguson, Niziba Mario, Jesse Money, Steve Dr. Lucha Sims. Japanese Television Rundown. July 14 All Japan, 1. Misawa and Akiyama beat Tao and Kawada to retain the double tag titles. This turned into an excellent match, but wasn't on the level of Misawa and Akiyama's recent title matches against Kawada and Tao and Williams and Ace. Misawa and Tao both did dives in the early minutes. Misawa took punishment for a long time, climaxed by Kawada dropping him on his head with a backdrop. Akiyama tagged in but was cut off and destroyed. The champs made a comeback with Misawa using a forearm tope elbow suicida, and Akiyama a simultaneous plancha. Akiyama hit his exploder suplex, but Kawada came back with a high kick. They teased Tao using the choke slam off the apron on Akiyama, but Misawa saved him.
Lots of crowd heat at this point.
Tao used his dynamic bomb and German suplex for near falls and even choke slammed Misawa and German suplexed him again on his head for more near falls. Misawa came back with a tiger driver on Tao, who kicked out, and even kicked out of a tiger suplex, but laid down after a second tiger suplex. An excellent finish. 4.5 stars. July 14 All Japan Women, 1.
Shaparita Asari retained the WWA Super Lightweight title beating Rita Mata with the Sky Twister.
Match went 12:09 and more than half aired on television. It was a collection of good moves with little heat, which is basically the story now for this promotion. Asari did a plancha from the top rope to the floor where she flew like Santo or Liz Mark in their primes, but then did a flip dive that landed short.
The Sky Twister didn't hit right. Technically a good match but not much emotion.
3.25 stars, 2.
Reggie Bennett pinned Kaoru Ito to win the vacant All-Pacific title.
About 2/3 of the match aired with Bennett winning with a power bomb. 2.5 stars, 3. Manami Toyota and Mima Shimoda won the WWA tag titles from Kyoko Inoue and Takako Inoue.
Basically the entire match aired.
Shimoda must have been injured because she wasn't in much. As a group, these top women are still solid workers, but they seem to be past their primes physically. Funny since all are 25 or 26, but AJW women of the past traditionally peak around 22 or 23, and AJW style is very physically oriented. The match didn't have the heat, which has been the story all year, but they had a big crowd. Toyota is missing more spots than ever before, particularly here springboard stuff off the ropes, and has cut down on the number of big moves, which may say something about all those moves physically catching up to her. That said, it was an excellent match lasting more than 30 minutes with great near falls. Toyota lost her balance attempting a springboard somersault plancha but hit a remnant of the move. She won the first fall out of nowhere by springboarding off the top rope from the ring back into the ring and hitting a sunset flip on Takako, which was a hot move. After lots of great near falls, Kyoko pinned Toyota with a clothesline.
Third fall saw Toyota attempt to do her springboard somersault plancha right, and the first time, she fell off the ropes, but into the ring unharmed. She went and did it again, and was unsteady on the ropes but pulled the move off. The teams continued to trade near falls, including Kyoko and Toyota doing their signature moves, Niagara Driver and Japanese Ocean Cyclone Suplex, on each other before Toyota pinned Kyoko after a jock suplex, starting with Kyoko on the top rope. 4 stars. EMLL. The main angle on the July 26 show at Arena Mexico was building up a CMLL welterweight title match with Guerrero de la Muerte challenging Mascara Magica. The match probably takes place this week as Guerrero teamed with Felino and Rey Bucanero and destroyed Magica, who teamed with Silver King and Dandy, making him submit in the third fall before the challenges were issued back and forth. Guerrero challenged for the title while Magica said he wanted Guerrero's mask on the line. There was a shoot stretcher job in a prelim match where Olympico went to do a somersault plancha, but his belt buckle caught the top rope, and he ended up going straight down, landing on the back of his head on the floor, but ended up being okay. The main event of the card saw Atlantis and Liz Mark Jr. over Apollo Dantes and Black Warrior and El Satanico. It was Liz Mark Jr.'s first television match, and he looked good and wasn't limping, but not as good as he looked before the broken leg according to what we've heard. Alpha MLL has complained about the wild matches ruining wrestling that AAA is putting on. This past week in Monterrey, Hector Garza faced Sangre Chicana in an ECW-style weapons match, which was basically the same deal AAA has been doing. The Promal show on TV Azteca still hasn't started, and apparently they will be doing television tapings on August 9 and August 16 with the new start date of the show pushed back to August 16. The first taping will be in a 2,500-seat building in Tlalnepantla with Vampiro and Liz Mark Jr. and Fantasma vs. Mascara Año 2000 and Universo 2000 and Violencia Pirata Morgan, and Angel Azteca and Super Electra and Sky vs. Pantrita del Ring and Shu El Guerrero, former AAA Kraken who jumped here after getting a big push in AAA, and Zapatista. Satanico beat Liz Mark on July 21 at Arena Coliseo to retain the CMLL middleweight title. The Vitorino Family Benefit Show will be on August 14 at Arena Coliseo with Liz Mark and Vampiro and Hector Garza vs. Connect and Emilio Charles Jr. and Negro Casas on top, plus Mil Mascaras, Tinieblas, Blue Demon and Fuerza Guerrera are all scheduled to attend as guests. AAA. Antonio Pena announced the biggest show of the year on November 20th at Plaza de Toros, the same building that Conan vs. CN Cars drew 50,000 fans in 1993, and announced it would include the top wrestlers from WCW, New Japan and War.
The biggest show of the week was on July 26 in Hidalgo with Conan and Mascara Sagrada and Rey Mysterio Jr. headlining against Pierroth Jr. and Halcón Dorado Jr. in his first main event as a heel and killer.
During the match, heel valet Janet, who is like a Sherry Martel in her prime and has tremendous heat, came out with a second woman at ringside, wrestler Megally. The faces had Lady Victoria on their side. Victoria was eliminated from the match when Janet gave her a pile driver, and the way they sell a pile driver in Mexico, the idea of doing it to a woman is brutal. They did a post-match angle where Megally turned on Janet to build for a hair versus hair match down the line. For those keeping track of all the titles, on this card was a match where the Mexican Mini's title was at stake with Super Muñequito defending against Espectrito. I don't know the result, but this card will air on television in Mexico City this coming weekend and on Galavision on August 10. The weekend television aired the rest of the Triple Mania show from Madero on July 15. Bouts that aired were La Parca and Winners and Super Colo, subbing for Latin Lover, and Al Mexicano beating Jerry Estrada and Fishman and Villano V and My Flowers, subbing for Heavy Metal, who apparently went on another binge and never made it out of Tijuana the night before, in what was called a very good match. The Rey Mysterio Jr. vs. Juventud Guerrera match was described as being 4 stars, but not on the level of their previous great matches in Tijuana or Philadelphia this year. This was the match where Mosco de la Merced and Pierroth Jr. came out and used chains to spread Mysterio Jr.'s arms apart. Pierroth Jr. had already used the cane on Mysterio Jr. and clotheslined ref Pepe Casas. Killer's music came out and they handed him the cane, but he turned on both and pulled the mask off, revealing Conan. After the ensuing melee, Mysterio Jr. won the match and then destroyed Guerrera's car. There is some question as to the long term of Guerrera with this promotion. He's moved back in with his father, who is the head of the Promel promotion, and some see him moving back as the inevitable first step in going back to Promel. The other match was a Piraeus Increíbles, Incredible Partners, match where Pero Aguayo and Villanos 3 and 4 technically beat Octagon and Psicosis and Cibernetico via DQ. It was a bad match. After it was over, Psicosis and Cibernetico turned on Octagon and brawled with him to the back. Then Los Villanos turned on Aguayo, who naturally by this point had juiced heavy. Pero Aguayo Jr. did a run-in for the save, but it wound up with the real killer doing a run-in and breaking a board on both Aguayos. Although the Mysterio Jr. match with Guerrera stole the show on the War Show on July 10, the reports from Japan are that it wasn't as good a match as Mysterio Jr.'s Japanese debut against Psicosis on the J-Cup show. War is booking a major show on October 11 in Osaka, and that's when Mysterio Jr. will return to Japan. Nuevo Laredo remains the hottest city in the country, doing huge crowds every week, including several sellouts of the 13,000-seat outdoor baseball stadium, using La Parca, Latin Lover and Pimpinela Escarlata as the top draws. The soap opera, which was to star Mexican rock star Gloria Trevi and include both Vampiro and Conan, ended up being cancelled when Trevi broke up with her manager and jumped to Televisa. This group returns to Acapulco, which at one point they were banned forever from appearing in because of the wild scene at the previous show, on August 17. They also returned to Juan de la Barrera Gym in Mexico City on August 16 with, not another, Four Corners match with Pero and Pero Jr., Conan, and Mysterio Jr., Guerrera and Killer and Psicosis and Pierroth Jr. Tijuana is scheduled for August 2 with Octagon and Tinieblas Jr. and Blue Demon Jr. vs. Pierroth and Guerrera and Misterioso on top, plus Halloween vs. Thunderbird in the Baja California title match, Leon Negro and Flammarion and Firebird vs. El Hijo del Enfermero and Genghis Khan and Damien, and, yet another, Four Corners match with Los Pandilleros, X-Men, Los Brujas and a new group called the American Legion, Black Blood and Don Juan and Sueño Chicano. Some talk of Luis Piccoli coming in for dates in northern Mexico.
All Japan. Besides the Triple Crown switch, the other top matches on the July 24 Budokan show saw Gary Albright beat Toshiaki Kawada with a choke sleeper. This result was pretty well expected since Kawada was going to have to do a major job for comments made recently in the press. Mitsuharu Masawa and Jun Akiyama and Tamon Honda beat Giant Baba and Giant Kimala 2 and Ryukaku Izumida.
Steve Williams and Johnny Ace and Johnny Smith beat The Patriot and Stan Hansen, and Monakia Mossman and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi, on about his 103rd try, finally beat Masafuchi to win the PWF Junior title with a German suplex in 1858. July 21 TV show did only a 1.4 rating. New Japan. The biggest show of the week was July 26 in Hiroshi Hazi's hometown of Kanazawa, with Hazi and Kensuke Sasaki losing to Riki Choshu and Yuji Nagata in the main event when Choshu used the lariat on both Hazi and Sasaki and Hazi. New Japan's gimmick when it comes to these things is athletic credibility, so Hazi would figure to lose as how can a guy as great a wrestler as Hazi is, work as a senator and then in his first match back beat the top stars who have been wrestling almost every night and are in top wrestling shape?
Hazi's presence drew a sellout of 3,800 fans.
Choshu carried Hazi around on his shoulders after the match, and Hazi said he would continue to occasionally wrestle.
Also on the show, Tatsumi Fujinami and Shiro Koshinaka beat IWGP Tag Champs Masachono and Hiroyoshi Tenzan in a non-title match. This current satellite tour has drawn mostly full houses in smaller buildings. Tokumitsu Ishizawa has left for a tour of CWA for Otto Wands under the name Kendo Kashin.
On July 27 in Vienna, he lost when challenging for the CWA middleweight title against Franz Schumann. He's expected back in January.
July 27 TV show did a poor 1.2 rating. Other Japan notes.
The two-night Women's Ultimate Fight Tournament on August 12 and August 13 at Budokan Hall will have first-round matches of Yumiko Hata vs. TBA, Colleen Heelis, a kickboxer from Netherlands, against Yoshimoto pro wrestler Linus Asuka, Tanya White, a bouncer from Australia billed as a jiu-jitsu practitioner against Reggie Bennett, and Roya Elena, a Russian judoka versus Yoko Takahashi, a former AJW wrestler who now competes in martial arts.
FMW's top matches for August 1 at the Shiodome in Tokyo are an explosive barbed wire match with Mr. Pogo vs. Terry Funk, the finals of the Independent World Heavyweight Title Tournament with Wing Kanimura vs. Masato Tanaka, a 1-on-3 cage match with Megumi Kudo vs. Shark Tsuchiya and Crusher Matamari and another girl, both Miwa Sato and Bad Nurse Nakamura, who were originally scheduled in a 1-on-4 cage match, have been fired by FMW this past week. Hair vs. Hair match with Nanjio Hayato vs. Takamichi Noku and a 12-man battle royal. Funk returned to Japan on July 26, drawing a sellout 2,200 in Kyoto, teaming with Super Leather to beat Koji Nakagawa and Pogo in a street fight match when Funk pinned Pogo after using fire on him. Tokyo Pro Wrestling, All Japan Women, LLPW and KA all ran Korakuen Hall this week, and none of the groups sold out the small building. AJW is back on August 4 with Manami Toyota and Mima Shimoda defending the WWWA tag titles against Toshio Yamada and Atsuko Mita. Tokyo Pro on July 24 had the first Sabu vs. 2 Cold Scorpio match. Scorpio is known as Black Uezama under a mask, with Uezama winning via countout. LLPW had its trios title defended on top on July 27.
Kao ran on July 26 as he again tried to rebuild his reputation after losing 2 real matches, doing a worked UFC-style match where he beat Geza Coleman Jr. 1-1 in UFC in 218, and Koki Kitahara beat Scott Damore in another match worked to look like UFC. Both Kao and Kitahara are attempting to get into the UFC tournament in September. Even though Kao lost to Mark Hull on a fluke, if he or Kitahara were to be put in with Tank Abbott, it would be an ugly massacre. The Golden Cups of UWF ran a show in Kobe on July 28, selling out a 2,100-seat arena with poor masked wrestlers known as 100% Machine, 150% Machine and 200% Machine, losing to Hiromitsu Kanehara, Yui Sano, and Nobuhiko Takada. After the show, Takada said that was the only show they'd work as he doesn't want masked wrestlers in UWF. Pro Wrestling Fujiwara Gumi ran on July 27 in Kawasaki, drawing 459 fans to a Dick Murdoch memorial show with Fujiwara beating Tatsuo Nakano on top. Several of the groups this past week have run free shows as part of fireworks festivals or country fair type of events. The biggest was Tokyo Pro's show on July 23 at Atami-san Beach, which was reported as being viewed by more than 65,000 fans. Apparently this is not an angle, although it sounds like one, but there is real heat in war between Genichiro Tenryu and Hiromichi Fuyuki, who are the group's biggest stars and have a relationship that dates back to All Japan. Publicly, Tenryu doesn't like Fuyuki's comedy style and says it has no place in war. In addition, NHK, one of the Japanese networks, recently did a show on pro wrestling. Hashimoto, Yoji Anjo and Great Sasuke were guests, and in an interview with Fuyuki, he said something to the effect that pro wrestling was worked, which also got traditionalists like Tenryu hot about admitting that on a highly rated network show. Fuyuki worked Kiao's show on July 26 and said he was going to work on the indie circuit leaving war. The wrestler Aquarius that beat Dr. Wagner Jr. for the CMLL light heavyweight title last week on the Big Japan Tour, unmasked this week, revealing himself as former Eva Ande MLL wrestler Yoshihiro Tajiri. Tajiri dropped the strap back to Wagner on July 28 in Sapporo. Among the parade of title matches for Michinoku this past week, the only title change saw Great Sasuke win the WWA middleweight title from Pilato Suicida on July 27 in Sakata. Sasuke is already starting to promote his October 10th show at Sumo Hall, in which his plan is to wrestle Dynamite Kid. On the July 19 Big Japan show, we reported the main event, Nagasaki and Yamakawa vs. Nakamaki and Matsunaga, as a ladder match, but it was actually a scaffold match. At one point Matsunaga jumped off the scaffold,
It was much lower than the old scaffolds in NWA, looked to be about 9 feet high, onto Yamakawa, who was on a table laying on barbed wire, and of course they went through the table. Universal Vale Tudo runs its second show on August 4 at Tokyo Bay NK Hall with an 8-man UFC-style tournament which includes former UFC prelim fighters Joel Sutton 2-0 in alternates matches, Jason Farn 0-1 losing to Guy Mesger, and Anthony Macias 0-2, plus several famous Brazilians, Marco Ruiz, Hugo Duarte and Valide Ismail, have singles matches. Rickson Gracie and Masakatsu Funaki appeared together on the television show SRS, a weekly talk/action show which covers legit fighting sports. The show was based around the July 7 Vale Tudo show.
Gracie was none too gracious talking about fighters like Igor Zinoviev and Dan Severn, saying the only one on the show who showed him anything was his brother Royler and said nobody else impressed him. When matches with Severn or Zinoviev were brought up, Gracie pretty much blew both of them off, saying why would he want to fight guys that he's not impressed with. Ilukain Mikhailov Rings defeated the most recent Brazilian Vale Tudo champion Mester Hulk by submission in 7-0-3 of a shoot match on a July 14 shoot show in Japan. USWA. Basically nothing much going on since the television show was cancelled on July 27. The show had originally been moved earlier in the morning because of NBC Olympics coverage since WMC-TV is an NBC affiliate. However, due to the bombing the night before, NBC News was covering that aspect during the time wrestling was scheduled. With the show not airing, they canceled the July 29 show in Memphis because it wouldn't have drawn anyone. ECW. The final ECW show in the regular Sunday night time slot on MSG Cable would have aired on July 28. The station changed program directors and the new director canceled the show. ECW will air on about 40% of the MSG affiliates with the Prime broadcast, and they were expected to sign a deal on CH31 in New York, which is a business/sports station, for Saturday nights at 1 a.m., which may start as early as this coming weekend. Sandman has moved back to Philadelphia from Utah, where he had been working a regular job at. Beulah will replace Kimona on the Japanese tour. Paul Heyman's plan at this point is to air both Raven vs. Tommy Dreamer and Eliminators vs. Takashi Okano and Keisuke Yamada title defenses from August 11 at Korakuen Hall on the TV show that airs on August 13. Gary Albright has been talked with about coming in, but it probably won't be for several more months. Vampiro's debut will likely be on the August 24 card. Heyman wanted him on August 3, but before Heyman confirmed the date with Vampiro, Vampiro got himself booked for that weekend on shows in the Cancun area of Mexico. Originally the idea was to put Vampiro vs. Luis Piccoli on the August 3 show. Chris Jericho's last date is August 3, while the Bruise Brothers will either finish up on August 3 or August 24. Raven missed the weekend shows due to pneumonia, while Pitbull No. 2 missed the date in Jim Thorpe because he was arrested and I believe not charged as part of a bar fight the previous night. Actually, Raven was at the July 26 Jim Thorpe show but was so sick he couldn't work, so they ran an angle where he challenged Sandman, who came out and all the heels jumped Sandman, and that was the extent of his activities. That crowd was up to 500 to 600, while July 27 debut in Warwick, Pennsylvania drew 860 with Taz and Brian Lee beating Terry Gordy and Tommy Dreamer. Lee used the Asiatic spike on Gordy to leave him laying while Taz choked out Dreamer and Bill Alfonso choked out Beulah. This set up an angle that is to air on this week's television where Dreamer wants to get Terry Funk as his partner for the August 3 Philadelphia show, but Gordy talks him out of it and gives him a partner's name, but the name will be kept secret until match time. August 2 in Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania is Sabu vs. Chris Jericho elimination match with Dreamer and Pitbull No. 2 and Gangstas vs. Shane Douglas and Lee and Eliminators, Sandman and 2 Cold Scorpio vs. Raven and Stevie Richards, Rob Van Dam vs. Hack Myers and Johnny Smith vs. Spicoli. Added to August 3 at ECW Arena are Scorpio vs. Jericho and Douglas defending TV title against Pitbull No. 2 along with the Dreamer and vs. Lee and Taz match. Here and there. According to our best reports, Larry Missouri Mahler Hamilton was around the age of 67 at his death, and had been working in Missouri as a bail bondsman. Thanks to the readers of Global Newsletter, which voted this newsletter and the Wrestling Observer Hotline as the best wrestling publication and best wrestling hotline respectively. Todd Bettingle on his WPLJ radio show was ripping and making fun of Herb Abrams and the story about his death. Burt Prentice has gotten television on CH39 in St. Louis on Friday nights. Empire Wrestling Federation on August 4 in San Bernardino. Missy Hyatt will be appearing at the Red Lion Inn in San Jose over Labor Day weekend for a sports show, as will Bret Hart. For more info you can contract Kirk White at the 7th inning stretch at 510-797-7759.
All Pro Wrestling in this area has a show on August 3 with only 70 tickets available. For more info, call 510-785-8396, and if you mention The Observer, you'll get a $1 discount on tickets. Mil Mascaras worked again on July 26 in Compton, California, as did Mascara Año 2000. UFC. Nothing really new regarding the September 20 pay-per-view show.
There is a good chance that Brian Johnston of San Jose will be brought back for that show, in which at this point, the only confirmed names entered are Mark Coleman and Tank Abbott.
There is still no official site for the show. Keith Hackney, who was originally invited to appear, declined the invite.
WCW.
The WCW tag titles changed hands twice over the weekend.
On July 24 in Cincinnati, in what was originally scheduled as a non-title match, Rick and Scott Steiner beat Harlem Heat when during a pre-match argument, Heat agreed to put the belts up. Steiners continued to beat Heat all weekend until the final show of the tour on July 27 in Dayton, where Heat regained the belts when Stevie Ray hit Rick over the head with the title belt, leading to the pin. The July 29 Nitro show was basically a backdrop for a major angle. While a match with Sting and Lex Luger and Randy Savage versus Ric Flair and Chris Benoit and Steve McMichael was going on, Jimmy Hart ran from the back and said the Outsiders were back there. He finally got everyone to stop the match and go to the back. When the camera got there, Arnold Anderson and Marcus Bagwell were laid out. Scotty Riggs ran out and Scott Hall hit him in the head with a garbage can lid and laid him out. The problem here is Nasty Boys and Public Enemy have been destroying each other with much stiffer garbage can lid shots for months, and most of the time they don't even sell the blows, let alone get taken away in the ambulance after one of them. Rey Mysterio Jr. then jumped off a guard railing, but Kevin Nash caught him and torpedoes his head into the trailer. The Outsiders, the only ones there were Nash and Hall, but in storyline we are supposed to believe Hulk Hogan and a fourth person were involved, so I guess it's the best angle Hogan has ever done, and he probably wasn't within 3,000 miles of the place, then jumped in a limo with Randy Savage on the roof of the limo and drove away. They sold it forever. The selling of the angle was tons better than the angle itself, with woman freaking out, Benoit nearly in tears, Sting and Flair going into the same ambulance to comfort Anderson and Bagwell, Mysterio Jr. having his mask taken off before going into the ambulance and screaming to Guerrero that there were 4 of them, etc. While the angle itself was a ratings killer for the night. It'll pay off in the long run because the curiosity after the angle should help the ratings this coming Saturday and Monday, and it should help the buy rate on August 10. Bobby Heenan walked off the show claiming he's got a bad neck and couldn't risk being out there, so Eric Bischoff did the second hour with Tony Schiavone and Larry Zbyszko. It was one of those deals where they sold the angle for so long it got boring, and then kept selling it for so long it eventually made a bigger impact. The wrestlers on the remainder of the show were acting distracted in their matches. The only interview was with Giant after choke slamming Greg Valentine in 141 of a title match, and he did a strong babyface interview, and Jimmy Hart did a hilarious interview saying that he's lied so regularly and so often that sometimes he even believes his own lies and that someday he'll have to pay for it. The show also featured a worst match of the year candidate with Jim Duggan beating Mike Enos. Even with the Olympics, the Nitro opened with a huge audience because the Saturday show was moved back an hour and 35% of its regular audience didn't watch, and Sunday was preempted, so that artificially inflated the Monday rating. However, after a 3.2 first hour, it fell to a 2.9 in the second hour, the second straight week with a drop. Nevertheless, the overall average of 3.0 rating and 4.8 share is something WCW would have been happy with going against the Olympics, particularly since WWF's Raw did a 2.1 rating and 3.1 share. Nitro Replay averaged a 1.7 rating and 3.5 share, which is a huge replay number, which set a new replay record. Other weekend numbers saw Saturday Night moved 1 hour later to a 1.7 and Pro do a 1.1. Baltimore and Norfolk on August 16 and August 17 respectively have been cancelled. Too many of the wrestlers complained about the schedule for August. Rick and Scott Steiner are rumored to have signed a contract. Weekend house shows saw July 24 in Cincinnati draw $3,559 and $49,819, July 25 in Charleston, West Virginia drew $2,500 and $31,000, July 26 in Muncie, Indiana drew $3,500 and $40,000, and July 27 in Dayton drew $4,100, $3,100 paid, and $40,000. Flair Savage in non-title matches, which weren't announced in the building as non-title, headlined all 4 nights with Savage winning. The Dayton match was a cage match. Nash and Hall debuted on the road working against Sting and Luger. Nash and Hall came out through the crowd to get big pop, since obviously they shouldn't dress in a WCW dressing room according to the angle. In some cities they got a big babyface pop, in others, a strong heel pop. They dominated the matches until Luger made the hot tag and put Hall in the rack.
Nash then came in with a chair, but Sting got the chair from him. The ref saw Sting with the chair and DQ'd him, but after the match Sting laid both out with the chair.
Reports from basically every show were that the Dean Malenko vs. Eddie Guerrero undercard matches, they traded wins, were the best on the show, generally in the 3 3/4 stars to 4 stars range.
The 1-hour Saturday night show was taped on July 23 at Disney. Benoit and Woman did an interview arguing about the finish at Nitro, which Woman blamed on Deborah McMichael. After a Sting and Savage win over Nasty Boys with Savage using the briefcase on Sags for the pin, the McMichaels came out and stole back the briefcase. Steiners beat Enos and Dick Slater when Sherry kissed Slater again, leading to the pin, and afterwards Slater and Sherry argued as they seemed to build up a triangle with Steiners, Heat and Slater and Enos.
They aired a paid commercial by NWO airing the beating on Sting as he was going to his car taped in Orlando, which they said was taped in Cincinnati, and Giant beat Booty Man on top.
Lee Marshall has been doing play-by-play on both Pro and Worldwide of late. The only conclusion I can come to about that assignment, since Marshall is by far the worst of the WCW announcing bunch, is that Tony Schiavone, who is in charge of those assignments, wants to make sure the only guy who gets any visibility is a guy that nobody will ever think is a better announcer than he is. Schiavone and Dusty Rhodes mentioned on Saturday the death of Missouri Mauler. For the August 3 Saturday night show, taped July 30 at Disney, the top bouts are Giant vs. Knobs, Flair vs. Chavo Guerrero Jr. and Savage vs. Benoit. WWF.
Ahmed Johnson's injury was announced on Raw as being a ruptured kidney from the attack by Ron Simmons. Correct spelling would be Farouk Azad.
Other reports are that it was really a severely bruised kidney and that Johnson has had blood in his urine, but they don't know exactly when it happened. Johnson also broke his nose during the six-man, presumably from a stiff kick to the face by Owen Hart. He was considered doubtful for this coming weekend, but the presumption now is that he'll start back at SummerSlam. The IC title match has been changed to Azad as the challenger. Jake Roberts presumably will also start back at that show. All sorts of stories are circulating as to what has kept him out of action, but we can't confirm anything. Independent estimates for the WWF International Incident pay-per-view were that it did in 0.37 buy rate, 92,000 buys, est. $830,000 company income.
WWF internal numbers are estimating in 0.53 buy rate.
Local syndication of CH5 in New York will start at 4 p.m. or whenever the baseball game ends. There is, or at least was, tremendous heat on Jim Cornette coming off the weekend tour, largely due to a backstage argument he had with Shawn Michaels after the match in Anaheim. Apparently they had worked out a spot where Michaels was going to superkick Cornette, but Cornette either tripped and fell down and Michaels superkicked air, or I guess Michaels felt Cornette double-crossed him on the spot. There were problems already between the two stemming from something that apparently happened after the show in San Francisco. Anyway, after they went behind the curtain in Anaheim, Michaels immediately began yelling at Cornette about the spot and Cornette began yelling back and it became a big deal internally.
Clarence Mason will become a regular manager for Crush, who they admitted on Raw was arrested on a weapons violation and controlled substance violation, although steroids themselves weren't mentioned.
Mason is obviously not his real name, and he was a former assistant DA in real life from somewhere in Florida who was a big wrestling fan and became friends with Ernie Ladd, who made the connection with the WWF with him. Iron Sheik will be brought back at the next tapings as a coach, as opposed to manager. Fatu had his head shaved and was told to lose a lot of weight and be introduced as a new character from the Middle East. They will probably once acknowledge that the new guy was Fatu, similar to why Jerry Lawler mentioned Ron Simmons' name once on Raw last week. The idea behind this is by saying who it is once, who aren't insulting the intelligence of the fans who figure it out, but not to dwell on it either. Sheik was under the impression he'll be given a major push and it'll be a hot deal because they are using him to exploit the heat from recent terrorist activities all over the news. Barry Windham's gimmick will be the stalker. He's not going to be a stalker like the kind of people that stalk celebrities, but more of a big game hunter gimmick. The Bruce brothers are also returning, although only for a similar level push as Freddie Joe Floyd, TJ Hopper, etc., in that they'll occasionally get a TV win but mainly be used to put over the tag teams that are being pushed, and they aren't going to be sent on the road.
WWF encouraged them to continue with ECW, however Paul Heyman didn't want to use anyone that loses on WWF television or is affiliated with WWF.
Pat Patterson's situation is that he won't be returning to office work, but will be helping with television and maybe go on the road 1 week a month to keep his hand in things. At least that's what Patterson is said to want. Supposedly he has no desire to work in the office again or help write the television shows. They were really starting to push a Bret Hart return in the television commentary.
Tons of pub both on Raw and mainstream regarding Mark Henry, the super heavyweight lifter who will be billed as the world's strongest man when he starts with WWF, presumably around September. He lifts after press time but before any of you are reading this. Henry is a lifelong wrestling fan and one of the few Olympic lifters who is also a strong powerlifter. While he is neither the strongest Olympic lifter, which is a more technique-oriented sport, nor strongest powerlifter, which is more power-oriented, because he's good at both, you can make an argument for him being the world's strongest man, although most people in the lifting world consider a guy named Anthony Clark, who ironically has a wrestling connection himself in that he does strongman exhibitions on some of the religious shows that guys like Billy Graham and Ted DiBiase appear on, who bench presses in the mid-700s as the world's strongest man right now. WWF has officially severed all ties with Warrior University and the Warrior comic book, so just about everyone is presuming that relationship is now dead. Warrior's name isn't mentioned by anyone at this point. Vader is said to be in the 360-pound range legit, down from 410. Buddy Landell probably won't be able to wrestle after blowing out his knee slipping on ice last winter until January or February. Hunter Hearst Helmsley should be getting a renewed push now that he's signed a long-term contract. Rumors are flying around regarding Too Cold Scorpio, but nothing confirmed. Ron Simmons was working as a warehouse manager for a Coca-Cola plant in or near Atlanta since his last wrestling foray. WCW was interested in bringing him back last November, starting with the 3-ring Battle Royal pay-per-view, but the sides didn't agree on money terms. The Vancouver pay-per-view show drew what is believed to have been the largest crowd and definitely the largest house in the history of wrestling in that city. Superstars taping on July 23 in Yakima, Washington before 2,922 fans paying $41,562 saw Billy Two Eagles from Oregon work a dark match, losing to Salvatore Sincere. Aldo Montoya pinned Jerry Lawler after a DDT, to build up an angle on next week's Raw where Lawler pile-drives him. Zeb Works putting over Freddie Joe Floyd to set up Floyd and Savio Vega beating Zeb and Justin Bradshaw the following week. Montoya was back as a jobber putting over Crush. The August 25 show at the Nassau Coliseum will be an all-tag team show with Michaels and Lothario vs. Vader and Cornette, Johnson and Sid vs. Hart and Smith, Undertaker and Roberts vs. Goldust and Mankind, Guns vs. God wins for the belts, Bodydonas vs. New Rockers, Mark Marrow and Vega vs. Helmsley and Steve Austin and Bushwhackers vs. Bradshaw and Zeb. Besides the SF and Anaheim shows, other gates for the week were July 24 in Spokane, Washington drawing $3,810 and $58,349, and July 26 in Fresno drawing $5,032 and $73,071. The biggest show of the coming week is the debut at the Molson Center on August 2 in Montreal with the Raymond Rougeau and Hart boxing match, and that show already had a $114,000 advance as of press time. Cornette did an amazing job of putting over Jose Lothario on the Raw show, much better than the similar deal on the free-for-all. Lothario came off good as the old proud retired wrestler, kind of like a Pero Aguayo in 15 years, but I just don't know if he has enough name recognition and empathy outside of Southern Texas where it'll mean something on a national basis, which is clearly what they are building it up for. When Cornette did the stuff with Bob Armstrong, Armstrong had been the local hero